All right, we're live. Welcome everybody to another episode of Carnivore Mastermind. Happy Thursday or Friday, I guess, depending on where you are on planet Earth. Welcome to everybody. If you're on Twitch, I'm new to this platform, so this is a carnivore channel. We're gonna be talking about the proper human diet, eating meat, and tonight our topic in specific is gut health. And so I asked you all about that. Is if you've been following my channel, you know that's the reason why I initially came to this way of eating, and I've still been troubleshooting a few things throughout my first year of doing this diet. And I recently got a whole microbiome test with a bunch of IBD stuff and parasites, and I tested for all that jazz. And so I've been looking through the comments on that video and thinking more about what I personally want to do and kind of how complex this topic is. And I thought, let's do a mastermind on it, right? So we can all throw in our opinions and get some info from you all in the audience, because I have a sneaking suspicion sometimes that maybe not everybody's gut health is 100% perfect, and this is not a very comfortable topic a lot of times to talk about. I know in this space we're a lot more open to it maybe than others. However, I wanted to hear from you all this week in the audience about what your experience has been. Like, is your gut health perfect? Are there still some things that we need to figure out? And so that's what we're going to discuss tonight. So bringing up the poll for this week, that's what I asked you about. Has your gut health improved a lot since going carnivore? As in, you have no issues, improved somewhat, you're still dealing with a couple things. Did you notice, maybe you didn't notice a change at all, maybe that's not why you came to the diet, perhaps it got worse or did not improve at all, and then other. And we had almost a tie this week between the first two options. So 44% voted for my gut health improved a lot, I have no issues, and then just slightly ahead of that at 45% was I've improved somewhat, but still dealing with some issues. And I would put myself in that category. And then only 6% said you didn't notice a change at all. Maybe that's not why you came here. 1% said it got worse or didn't improve at all. And then 3% said, leave a comment. So some comments from Sublime Bites. When I was eating more veggies and beans and things, I was always bloated, gassy, and had diarrhea. I kept eating it because I thought it was healthy. And cutting those things out, now you're not feeling bloated anymore. Mostly just eat garlic and onions and tomatoes on occasion with a carnivore lifestyle. So that's awesome. Brittany Lynn says it's been a long journey to heal my leaky gut, and I still don't think it's 100%, but darn close. This way of eating is so healing. I totally agree. Oh, didn't heart that one yet. Rick, Charger Mopar, who I think is restarting his computer and will be joining us shortly, said he tried plant-based diet in 93 and was getting diarrhea every day with no relief, back to carnivore, and after a month, it's all gone. Now the only time I have digestive issues is when I get the flu. Aid Larson says it helps with ASD, which is super fascinating, gut-brain connection. And we'll just read the last few here since there was only a few. Vicky Kenton says, I recently had a huge gut issue after 1 year carnivore and 1 year ketovore. I think I caught a bad bug. I have my energy and strength back, most of my appetite, but haven't corrected the diarrhea after 17 days. Helps. Maybe we can address this as a question tonight. How do I correct this naturally? What do I eat instead of the oat bran, banana, rice, applesauce, and toast diet? So we could maybe talk about that after you get sick, or you maybe eat some bad food. Like, how does your microbiome recover and rebound from that stuff? And then I think it's Colita 1979 says, I have RA because of leaky gut due to H. pylori, still dealing with gut issues. So we had a little bit of a mix in here, which I thought was interesting. And I'm glad to have that feedback because now we can kind of delve into all of that. So as usual, we'll kind of go around the panel here and give your thoughts on the topic, maybe your personal anecdote, and yeah, anything you think about this, and then we'll address some questions. If you want to leave them in the chat with a QQQ, we'll pull them up after everybody's had a chance to speak. We'll start with Christy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Christy. My channel is Meeting Wellness. And I mostly have not really had a lot of gut issues, and really have started hearing about all these people with gut issues since coming to Carnivore and finding out about people like my friend Nia here, you know, who are tending to struggle with this kind of stuff. The only few things that I can talk about as far as personal anecdotes are when I first started Carnivore, which I did accidentally just by not wanting to make the veggies. I had about 3 or 4 weeks of pretty severe diarrhea where I was running to the bathroom multiple times a day. And I had never had an issue like that before. The only reason I was even able to stick with it is because I was having such, you know, benefits in other ways, like my mental health and energy and stuff. So I really wanted to stick with it and just, you know, kind of hope that my gut would sort itself out. And the only reason I was able to do that was because as a teacher, I happened to start Carnivore during my summer break. So I was home. And so I was able to, had I been in my classroom, there would have been no way, because it was, you know, like I was having to run in the bathroom multiple times a day. You can't leave a classroom of 30 kids to go do that. So that was just luck, you know, that I happened to start Carnivore during summer. And after about 3 to 4 weeks, you know, that symptom went away and my gut has been amazing. And in fact, I will say that as far as any other improvements, like I don't pass gas like hardly ever anymore. So it's not like I had a big problem with that before, but it's like it's just so rare now, which is so interesting to me. So that's my minor experience. I know other people have a lot more problems, as we saw in, you know, Nia's poll there and some of the comments that were left. How about you, John?
Hi, I'm John Lispine. I'm Carnivore Teacher 1965 on YouTube. That's my channel. And my guts were good, I thought, on the standard American diet because I had tons of fiber. So I was moving my bowels a lot, and it was, you know, it was like everybody else's. And then when I went keto, which is what I did first, it didn't change much because I was still getting all that fiber. And I guess, you know, fiber, there's carbohydrates there in fiber as well. And then when I went ketovore and I cut out a lot more, and then eventually carnivore, it was so gradual over the years that my gut health really never got bad like a lot of people's does when they go carnivore. They always complain about the diarrhea. So I didn't have an issue with that. Mine actually went the other way. I had more, I felt like I was constipated because I didn't understand the concept of eating carnivore. Your body absorbs all the nutrition and you have very little waste and it's very infrequent. So I learned to adjust my fat intake, which gave me a better bowel movement. I think my gut health is really healthy. I feel well. I think it's good if I were to describe it. And there's the Bristol stool chart that we could talk about in this talk as well. I know we're going to talk about, it's kind of a controversy, fiber versus no fiber. People are in two camps of the controversy, saying that you must have certain amounts to build up the good gut bacteria for your immune system. And we don't know much about that system. Others say that, you know, we build a certain environment with our animal products only. We don't need fiber and sugar because that's a different kind of gut bacteria. So I'm in the learning stage of all of this. But I do know my N=1 experiment on myself is that I'm all carnivore, and I've been this way for going on 2 years soon. And my gut health is pretty darn good. So I'm going to stick with what I have. I don't think I need to add anything to improve it, but we'll see. How about you, DC?
Yeah, with me, I'm coming from a very different background for a lot of, than a lot of people. Like when it comes to my gut health, like after my transplant, I had an ulcer in my stomach the size of a tennis ball. I had a leaky gut. I had a hole in my stomach. I had damage, a lot of damage done to my, not just my stomach, but my whole esophagus and digestive tract because of the chemotherapy. So it's, healing from that, it's taken a very long time. But the biggest difference that's come from this for me, dealing with reflux, dealing with a lot of the gut issues have actually gone for me. Actually, it's been really good. One of the best thing I've done is to get rid of all fiber. Fiber has been, it's an absolute, it's dynamite to your body. It really is. It is fiber is the only thing that you eat that actually expands when you eat it, because we can't actually break it down in the stomach acid or the digestive tract. So it actually causes inflammation, causes hormone disruption, it causes all sorts of problems, including erectile dysfunction for men and all sorts of problems anyway. But for me, the carnivore diet, high fat, even when I was on keto, like just the fat itself has been absolutely remarkable in the healing of my my stomach, my esophagus, my digestive tract, everything like that. So it's and I would say like incorporating the high fat and getting rid of the fiber have been the two main things that have actually done the most good for my body. And it's like, I mean, taking out certain things as well. Like, there are things that your body reacts to, like other things that cause reflux, like alcohol and coffee. Also causes these problems. So getting rid of coffee was another big step for me. Like that's, I mean, just removing as much plant material as possible has been the biggest step. I think the biggest step forward for me. Even when I was going keto, I still had vegetables and fruits and that sort of stuff. But the high fat is, I don't think it's, I don't know, it's very difficult way to say it, I guess. But even when you have a good amount of fat and meat in your diet, if you still have fiber and you still have plants in it, you're actually not getting as much out of it as you could be getting, So that, to me, like the carnivore diet has made the world of difference. That extra 10% is like night and day difference. That's what it's done for me anyway. And it's done many other things, but in terms of gut health, that would be a huge step for me, I think. I'm not sure Rick's going to have much of a recovery story.
Well, I actually had some digestive issues when I tried the plant-based diet in 1993. And as time went on, I don't think I had a solid bowel movement at all for weeks at a time. It was just constant diarrhea, gas, pain. And then when you lay down, you can taste what you ate 3 hours earlier. It's just not a very pleasant experience. So I know a little bit about it, but thankfully it's been more than 30 years since I had to suffer with that. But it was so bad that I can still remember it. And I can remember being in the elevator and having gas and trying to hold it. And then eventually you just can't hold it anymore. And then everyone in the elevator starts to act funny and they're looking around and they're covering their face and they're making funny grunting noises. And the next time the floor opens, everybody starts leaving. So I do have a little bit of experience with it. But I have to express one thing. I've had a lot of people tell me, and they say, well, if you don't eat any fiber, you're going to get constipation. You'll never go to the bathroom. But I've been going to the bathroom at least once a day for my whole life. I've never had constipation. In fact, the first time I really heard about constipation was on those commercials for X-Lax. And, we used to play pranks on the principal. One time we put X-Lax in his coffee. So I kind of knew what it was. And then they had that cartoon show, King of the Hill, where Hank Hill, he had a problem and he couldn't go to the bathroom. And that was like 20 years ago or something. It was back when I used to watch TV and I was laughing at that. But I've never experienced the constipation. And in terms of digestive issues, as David said, I don't have that problem. The only time I get like gas or diarrhea is when I got the flu. I got the flu a few weeks ago. My stomach felt a little weird. I had a little bit of diarrhea, but it's usually gone within a day. So I can only imagine what some people have had to go through. And again, when I went plant based, that's when I had digestive issues. So I think that it has to be related. And again, on the carnivore diet, I don't have any problems. So there has to be something to this. And the more testimonials I see, the more I'm beginning to understand what's really going on. So I don't know what anyone else's thoughts is, but that's been my experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like
Yeah,
when
it's
people talk about, sorry, I was just going to say, like when people talk about IBS, for example, like I used to go like 10 times a day, like after my transplant. I just could not keep anything in my body at all. Yeah. It was like basically just going back and forward, back and forward. It was insane. And like the hospitals will give you, like they tell you to take some of the medications they give you, like stool softeners, and tell you to take a high fiber diet, which is just insane. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Sorry,
definitely insane, in my opinion, as well. My, the first things that I remember being wrong with me, were gut issues, starting when I was a teen, and so, um, but I always knew it had to be food, right? Because it's every time I eat, I get sick. Every time I eat, I'm in pain or something's happening, either within hours to days after that, and so, it's such a fascinating topic because I think there's like obviously diet plays a huge role in what happens in our gut, right? Because it's the mechanism, it's all the mechanics of it. But there are other factors as well that I've also experimented with that I think many people that have chronic gut issues probably have to experiment with to some degree, that also affect your gut health, including stress levels and um, anxiety and things like that are highly correlated typically with gut problems as well. Emotional, um, just I don't know if not handling emotions is the right way to say it. I don't think that's the right way to say it, but just emotional upset, things like that can definitely contribute to gut problems. And so, um, but we're going to kind of focus on the diet stuff mostly tonight. And I prepared some slides tonight, you guys, and I think I figured out how to show these. So let me see if I can, because basically what I wanted to put picture to was the comparison between our digestive system as humans and all these other animals, right, that eat plant-based diets that are designed to eat plants and that we are typically compared to, especially by people that are proponents of plant-based diets. Like, well, if primates and gorillas and all these things are our ancestors, and we should be herbivores too, right? We're made to eat plants. We don't have the same digestive capacity that they do, and I think that's really the foundation of the argument as I see it, for whether fiber is necessary or not. Is because can we actually, like, what do we actually get out of fiber? And we kind of brought up the surface level of that here, where or what you hear on the surface level of that argument is, oh well, it lowers blood sugar because it stops sugar from absorbing so quickly, and that's why it's good. Oh, we need this hyper diverse microbiome, right? Because that's better. Why is it better? No one know, nobody's really coming out and saying why it's actually better. Um, because there's no contrast, right? Between if you don't eat any fiber, the only comparison is people that are eating a low fiber diet are on a standard American or standard Western, standard global diet. They're eating garbage food, which is low in fiber, right? So that's what people are being compared to when we talk about low fiber. So we don't have any real good evidence to compare something like what we're doing versus a plant-based way of eating or anything else. Hopefully that'll change in the future. But let me see if I can figure out how to.
The problem is that their arguments are not based in science at all. Like they have their arguments, what you say, like when they compare us to different animals on the planet, they have no clue what they're talking about. We have a completely different digestive tract to other animals on the planet.
Okay, starting from the beginning. We do. And here are some pictures of things that just kind of represent, what we're talking about. So stomach pH is one of the big ones. So
Yeah.
the average, acidity of our stomach as humans is between 1.5 and 3. That's highly acidic. And the purpose of that is to denature proteins and break down food and prepare that for our enzymes to digest that. And obviously, it also prevents pathogenic organisms from getting in, bacteria and things like that. It kills that before it gets into our small intestine where we absorb most of our nutrition. Comparing that to gorillas, right, which are, it's like, oh, well, those are our ancestors, right? So we should eat the same diet. They have a stomach pH of 3 to 4, which is arguably less acidic, and they're primarily herbivores, and they can eat meat in on rare occasion. They've been observed to eat insects and potentially like small mammals if they're kind of desperate or whatever. But, for the most part, they're eating high fiber plants. And as we'll see in the, depiction of the digestive tract too, they have a much larger colon, a much longer colon than we do, because they rely heavily on fermentation of that fiber to actually be able to extract some nutrition. So, you see like the little pot belly on these guys.
Yes.
It's not because they're fat; it's because they're essentially bloated, with all this fermentation happening. And
See,
so there's a chimpanzee.
So I just
that,
want to point out that's the reason why like gorillas have such a long colon is because that's where they sort of their food actually rots, and they sort of that's where they digest their stuff, like they absorb the nutrients from. When food that reaches our colon, yeah, like if you're on a carnivore diet, for example, our food is not meant to reach our colon. It's meant to be broken down and absorbed before it reaches the colon. That's why our colons are so short and so small. But when you eat indigestible fibers, which are like nuts, grains, and legumes and all that sort of stuff, beans and stuff, these things they are sugar that is indigestible. They are hard sugars that are indigestible. So you get glucose spikes, you get blood glucose spikes, but you don't like I said before, it actually expands when it hits our stomach, and it expands through our digestive tract, and then it sits in our colon and rots, and that's what actually causes a lot of damage to your colon and to your digestive tract, which often leads to cancer, because there's foods that are rotting in your colon, that it does so much damage to it. It's like eating sandpaper.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I know DC, you and I are both fans of that book, Fiber Menace. I recommend that book to anybody who has gut health issues and wants to get a different perspective on fiber. That blew the lid off of my perspective when I first read it. Made a lot of sense. It's like, oh, no wonder I'm suffering so much. So yeah, it's just a different, like, chimpanzee here. Look at the hind gut, the colon here. It's much longer than ours, which is right here. This is a human fetus. So look at how, it's almost like a small intestine in a way. Like it's not meant to, store this tons of this stuff in our guts. So then we're comparing that to ruminants, right, who eat grass and eat plants primarily, and look at all the stuff that has to happen here. So they have a 4-chambered stomach. Just to go over it briefly, the rumen, the pH is between 5.5 and 7, which is, much closer to and or neutral. And so that supports the activity of microbes like bacteria, protozoa, and fungi that help ferment and break down fiber. So even we could stop right there, end the conversation. Thank you everyone for coming, because right there, just compare, okay, 5.5 and 7 is what allows, microbes and stuff to get in there because they need them to break all this stuff down. We have 1.5 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
So, the first part of our digestive system, besides the mouth, which is pre-digestion, we're saying no to all microbes, as many as possible, right? We're not inviting them to come in here to do anything. And so, and so that's this whole thing. This whole thing over here is the rumen. It's like giant. Yeah. And then the reticulum is the second part over here. This is the same pH, 5.5 to 7. It's like another fermentation chamber. Then the omasum is here. You get a little more acidic, around 5 to 6, and it absorbs water and nutrients from, that digested plant material. And then you have the abomasum, which is like I think that's what they call the true stomach. Yeah, the true stomach, which is similar to like what our stomach might be, but it's still between 3 and 4 pH, but they say it can drop as low as 2. So that's where they're actually absorbing the fatty acids. They're actually absorbing a high fat diet out
Yeah, that's
of
right.
this. So the point is that, you know, cows, ruminant animals with that system take in around 70% of their calories from the fermentation process. So it benefits them, right? They're getting the majority of their caloric intake and their nutrition from breaking down that fiber. Gorillas and primates, somewhere between 30 and 60%. And over here is us at 5 to 10%. I've heard it argued that it's even less than 5% sometimes that we get from that whole process. So the question is, do we actually need fiber? What about people that have their colons removed? How do they survive without this all important microbiome, right? And, you know, interacting with their body? And is it really what it's been made out to be? And so that's sort of the question that we're all answering here with our N=1. But maybe we'll just go around again and give your thoughts on that and give everybody a turn to talk here. So.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't really have any more thoughts. That was very well said, Nia, as far as our pH of our stomach being much more similar to other carnivores. And like you said, our colons are a lot shorter. We cannot ferment that stuff. I've taken all the fiber out of my diet and don't notice, you know, any difference other than that, you know, adjustment period. I've heard, I'll pose this to the panel. I've heard, I was just watching a panel discussion. It wasn't a debate, but they had like Dr. Chafee and Dr. Baker were on there. And then they had some like plant-based people. And the one plant-based guy kept talking about, well, I totally agree that insoluble fiber is unnecessary, but you just absolutely have to have that soluble fiber. So I know DC's already shaking his head. I was wondering what you guys thought about that.
Whether it's insoluble or soluble, it's still sugars. They're polysaccharides that are they're high in sugars. And even when they are soluble, the human body still does not absorb. Actually, the anti-nutrient part of like plants is basically fiber. It stops you from absorbing nutrients that you get from the best part of your diet. So even if you're eating these you know, insoluble these soluble fibers with meat, for example, it's still going to block you from absorbing what you want from the meat. So what's the point of eating it? It's going to spike your glucose. It's going to stop you from absorbing the nutrients that you want from your meat. So there's really no point to it. It's just not a good idea at all. I mean, I do like, but there are like vegetables that you can ferment first. So you've broken them down and digested them before you eat them. That's what fermenting is all about. Like sauerkraut, I found to be very useful. But I think that the useful part of that is the fact that it's fermented in salt, right? So I found it very helpful for IBS. I found it very helpful for reflux. I found it very good for the stomach in general. But again, I think that the biggest health benefits you get from sauerkraut comes from the salt, the fermentation in the salt. So, and I haven't used it since going carnivore either.
I agree with the sauerkraut because I do use it occasionally when I don't have enough money to afford the beef that I would like to get, and I'm eating a lot of pork and chicken. I will eat it along with sauerkraut because otherwise my energy levels start to decrease. So beef seems to have everything I need to feel my best. Beef and eggs, I could live on that no problem. But when it comes to the chicken, the commercially raised chicken, I think is part of it because the parking lot chicken is actually a lot better. The meat is darker and it's more flavorful. And the same thing with the ducks and the iguanas and all that stuff. But the same pork, I mean, it's been a long time since I've got any wild pigs. They tend to be leaner. Of course, they do tend to have parasites, so you have to cook them more. But when you're eating that commercially grown meat, the sauerkraut is helpful. But if you think about it, I don't understand the whole idea of fiber. I was watching a video a couple days ago on the Plant Chompers channel, and I comment on there. I do watch some of the vegan videos, and I made my comment, and a bunch of people were saying, well, you got to have 100 grams of fiber and this and that. And I asked questions why, and no one can come up with an answer. They seem to
Mm.
believe that you need the fiber as a way to make your turds bigger so they come out. And I've always said, well, what is the point? Why do you have to go to the bathroom multiple times a day? If you're able to get what you need from eating, and as mentioned before, you can see there are people out there that have their colon removed. They have a colostomy bag and they're still able to live. And some of them do pretty well. You see the one guy in the carnivore community, we know who he is. He's been able to go quite well without the colon. And so my question was always, why do you need the fiber? When I think of fiber, I think of what I used to make ceiling tiles, which is basically just fiber blended with water. The fiber expands, and then what you do, you form it into a shape and you dry it out. And when it dries, it's a very light material. But I keep thinking to myself, if I'm going to put that stuff, it's like pouring something down the drain. If you dump out plaster or debris, you don't dump it down the drain, because what's going to happen? It's going to get in the pipe. It's going to stick to the side of the pipe. It's going to build up and it's going to clog it. So anybody
Mm.
knows that if you're doing remodeling or whatever, you don't put insulation and drywall and other fibrous materials into your drain, because you'll clog it up. So why in the world would we eat that? And as Nia's diagram, she did a very good job showing the digestive systems. You can see the difference between the primates and us. Our colon just basically goes up and down. It seems like it's there more to absorb water than anything else. I don't even know if you could ferment that fiber, how would you reabsorb it? I always thought the fats were absorbed in the small intestine, not in the colon. So
Mm.
again, I don't understand where the vegans are coming from, and none of them have been able to explain it to me in a way that seems scientifically sound.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
vegans
it's because
they're
of that.
repeating what they keep hearing that's out in the ether. Fiber, fiber, fiber. I have a friend who has major problems with his colon. He has a autoimmune disease, and the doctor puts him on a ton of medicine and advises him to eat more fiber. And I shake my head. I gave him my advice, and he's listening to his doctor. And every once in a while, he has to go back in the hospital. It's the fiber that is ripping and tearing and gouging along the way as it travels through. The colon's job is to do one thing: it's to draw in water, it's to draw in moisture,
Right.
to make a healthy bowel movement. Now, people with colostomy bags, when they eat just beef, lamb, pork, poultry, fish, and eggs, just animal products, what goes in, it gets their bile breaks it down, and it comes out in a very smooth. They see it in the colostomy bag, not to sound gross here, but they see exactly what it is. It's a very healthy movement, and they can physically see it when they change their bag. When they eat anything with fiber, any vegetable matter, any fruit, anything with fiber in it that's from a plant, the amount that they chewed it, that's where it stops. And it comes out, it looks exactly the way it was when they chewed it. If they chewed very little bit and they're swallowing chunks, the chunks come out in the colostomy bag. So think about that with our intestines. What we have to push through. And then people develop little pockets, and these seeds and nuts and things get caught in the pockets, and they cause inflammation, and they cause a lot of problems. So I know there's still a lot of research to be done about the immune system and how it's connected to our good gut bacteria. So that's the topic that I want to learn more about. I believe that a good gut bacteria is achieved through the carnivore diet. And then when we have fiber, which converts into sugar, and when we eat sugar and carbs, that nourishes the bad gut bacteria. And it feeds, it'll feed your cold. It'll make you sicker. So I really believe our gut health it's also part of our emotional health. When you're not feeling good down there, you're not feeling good up here. You feel gross. So carnivore is absolutely the way. No fiber. I'm sold on it. When I first became keto, then ketovore, then carnivore, I was back and forth on the fiber. I didn't know. I listened to everybody's argument, and there are doctors arguing both sides on this issue. They really are. And I'm sold on the no fiber, mostly because of my own physical body experiment. I know how I feel and how my body works on zero fiber. And I'm going to stick with that as my example to share with people. You know, everybody has a reason, but that's my main reason. I feel best without that stuff going through my guts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. You know, oh, sorry.
Sorry?
I was just going to say, another thing they say is that, well, you're just going to eat all this fiber, food with fiber in it, because it helps you feel full. And I'm using air quotes for feel full, because full on what? It's not a nutrient. So like Dr. Zoe Harcombe has done amazing research on this. And yeah, you absolutely require zero fiber, because the daily requirement for carbohydrates is 0. And since fiber is a carbohydrate, your requirement is 0. But yeah, they say to eat it to feel full. Well, why would I want to feel full on a bunch of stuff that I'm not getting any nutrients from? If you haven't seen Wednesday Night School that most of us were on last night on John's channel, and I have the replay on mine, we talked all about that. So why would I want to fill up on a bunch of stuff that I'm not even getting any nutrition from, and that is probably just ripping my guts apart anyway? I have no problem. The carnivore diet is very satiating, and I feel full all the time, and it's the best diet for that. I used to spend my life feeling hungry. I feel full on carnivore, and I'm getting everything my body needs nutrient wise. I don't see why, that would be a good solution.
I think there's also a difference between being full and being bloated.
Yes.
When you eat fiber, like we were saying before, it expands in your stomach, and then it expands throughout your colon, all your digestive tract and everything. So it gives you that bloated feeling, but it's not. That's a completely different feeling to being full.
That's a stretch receptor feeling that you may feel temporarily, but that's not leptins that get sent to the brain, which is the satiety hormone that gets sent from your fat cells. The stretch receptors are part of feeling satisfied and full. And maybe fiber will temporarily do that for you, but give it 20 minutes, you're going to be hungry again and bloated and gassy all at the same time.
Yeah. Christy brings up a very good point. Why would you want to feel full? I never understood that. I like to eat until I'm satisfied. I don't want to feel full, because, you feel full, then you feel like you don't want to do anything, and then you're stuffed and you're laying there. I did that when I was a kid. A lot of times I'd eat. When I was on the plant-based diet, I'd try to stuff myself, and I felt awful. And sometimes you feel like throwing up, and then you sit there and you can't do anything. You have to lay down until that stuff starts going down, and then you can finally get up and do something. And then what happens? Then you feel hungry again. You think, man, I don't feel satisfied. And you go through this cycle, and it's just really unpleasant, because you've had your plant-based breakfast, and then you're looking at the clock for lunchtime. When is lunch? When is lunch? Then you have lunch. Then you're stuffed. Then you fall asleep. Then you go through the whole cycle again.
Forgot about all the snacks in between.
Well,
Everybody does.
I never got into the snacks, because when I was eating plant-based, I didn't want to eat, because the food was so nasty. I thought about it, how can you snack on like leaves and stems and roots and all that nasty stuff? There's just nothing there that you're going to be excited by. It wasn't until I went back to the carnivore diet, and then it's like, wow, I've had some steak, or I've had some eggs, or, even pork or chicken or whatever, and I feel great. Like now, I'll eat a meal and I feel fine. And the moment that I finish eating, I can go right back to work. I'm not loaded down. I don't feel like I'm going to burst. I don't feel like I'm going to throw up. And then you go out there and do what you have to do, and you can work and work and work. And then, maybe when it gets dark, it's like, well, it's time to eat dinner. You don't have to eat it, and you're not in a hurry. The other problem is when you're eating plant-based, when you're trying to cook or prepare the food, you're hungry and you just want to get it done so fast, and it just is nothing satisfying about it. But when you're on the carnivore diet, you could be working, you could be talking to people, and the food's cooking and it's smelling good. And the more that it cooks, and that right moment when it's ready, there's never a hurry. You don't feel like, wow, I'm so hungry. No, it's like my food is cooking and you feel satisfied. And then when you eat it, you feel even more satisfied. So again, why would you want to feel full? Why would you want to stretch your stomach? Just eat the good stuff and you'll feel great, and you'll never be stuffed. That's what I like.
Yeah, that's right. You don't get that I've got to sleep after a meal sort of feeling.
Yeah, definitely. I will direct people to like maybe watch some of my previous update videos because I struggled with all that this time around. Like I was tired and all this kind of stuff. So I've had to really work through and figure out like meal timing and how much fat and all this kind of stuff. And so for that 45% of people, that was saying, "Hey, I've improved, but I'm still dealing with some issues." I just want to throw it out there that I mean, it's been my experience that things take time to heal, and potentially the more disrupted your previous diet was, or if you had bad habits like I did with drinking a lot of alcohol and stuff and you're cutting that out, all that stuff affects your gut health too. And so your body's going to take on what it can take on in the moment that it can take it on, and so not everybody has an overnight 2-week adjustment period. Sometimes it takes a little bit to dial it in. And so don't be discouraged if you didn't seem to get that, 30 days and now my guts are healed and everything's fine. Because I think the longer you've suffered with something, potentially the longer it really can take to fully heal. And the body knows what it's doing. It's working hard to heal. And so it takes some patience sometimes, and it takes, kind of like I mentioned in the beginning, other lifestyle factors modified to, manage your stress, learn to cope with things in a healthy way, develop other positive habits like sleeping well and the proper exercise and things like that, so that it just helps facilitate that whole process of healing. But I haven't eaten any fiber in a year, and I never feel better than when I cut fiber completely out and essentially plants completely out of my diet. And so that's I'm definitely on team no fiber. We should make shirts that say like, or cups, because everybody always has like the coffee cups that say, coffee makes me poop and all this stuff. It's like we could come up with some weird pun that's like no fiber is the best poop,
Just,
or I don't know.
just fiber is crap.
Yeah, fiber. Yes, something like that, and just
That's a
drink
good
out
one.
of that. Okay, we'll have to make a cup.
We'll make
All right, we
coasters
have a
too.
couple questions here that I want to throw up here. So not necessarily related to gut health, but this was from John about 20 minutes ago or so. Why is it so common to see comments about doctors claiming carnivore poses kidney damage risk? Anybody have a comment on this?
I see that and hear that all the time, that too much protein is going to cause damage to your kidneys. And that is a myth. It's just like cholesterol, the cholesterol myth and the saturated fat myth. It's a myth that people just, they hear it, they think it's common knowledge, and they just repeat it. It's just a myth.
Yeah, it's absolute garbage. I only have one kidney.
Oh, really?
My kidneys, because one of them was destroyed by the large tumor that I had sitting on both of them.
Wow.
And the other one was down to just 12% capacity.
Wow.
When I found it. So I was literally dying of kidney failure when I was diagnosed. But now it's just the one kidney is actually working high. Like when you do your kidney test and when I get my blood test, it's actually in a normal healthy range for two kidneys. Like my one kidney is actually operating above and beyond like what normal kidney function would be. What happens with your kidneys when you're on a high protein diet is that they do grow. They're like muscle tissue. They grow and they become stronger. The same as your liver does, and some other organs do as well. But this whole myth about protein being bad for your kidneys because it clogs them up and all that sort of ridiculous nonsense. Maybe if you are on a standard Western diet, or even if you're on this like standard fitness sort of regime, where you're taking in a lot of highly processed sort of foods, okay, that will damage your kidney. But this has been, my kidneys went through a lot of treatment, right? A lot of chemotherapy, and that did a lot more damage to my kidney later on as well. Like, so you know, there's nothing that protein, like a natural good source of proteins. I'm talking about amino acids, long chain, short chain fat amino acids that you get from meat, not crude protein where everything's protein is good. Plant proteins will kill you. All right. So, you know, there's absolutely no basis for telling people that your kidney is going to get damaged by eating the carnivore diet. It's just absolutely ridiculous nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if anything, it's the sugar. All right. What's
Right.
one of the first things that goes wrong with a type 2 diabetic or a type 1 diabetic? It's their kidneys. It's
Mhm.
kidney damage. So
Right.
carbohydrates and sugar are the first things
Blood
we take out,
glucose.
right? And any high glucose is going to damage any organ, and the kidneys are very susceptible to that.
Well,
So
if you think about it, that's the way they used to find diabetes because
exactly,
they had blood sugar in the urine.
exactly.
And
Yeah,
you
that's
know, you
right.
put
I
sugar
think
on anything.
diabetes mellitus, I think, God, I wish I was smart enough to remember. The breakdown of the origin of those words has to do with sugar in the blood or in the urine. That's where the
Yeah, that's
words
right.
come from. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
people don't understand. It's not just added sugar. So anything that is carbohydrate
Turns into
is
sugar. Right.
is sugar in your body. It's
Right.
glucose. It's glucose in your blood, and that glucose is what damages your not just your kidney, but it also damages your liver. And it, it does lower your cholesterol because you're not using as many lipids to get those nutrients out to produce hormones. Right, so it does a lot of damage to your body.
And that's a point that we have to constantly explain to people is that, all right, you're not eating sugar.
Yeah.
Rice breaks down. It's a string of glucose molecules that breaks down, starting with the saliva, and then the stomach acid breaks it right down into glucose. Rice, corn, wheat, potatoes, bread, pasta, all of anything that's a starch becomes glucose. So it's not just table sugar or honey or syrup, and that's what's damaging our kidneys. And when you're eating meat and eggs, you're actually healing your kidneys. People go from stage 3 to stage 2.5, stage 2 to stage 1. There's evidence out there. I can't cite it right now on this channel right here, but people are healing their kidney damage. There is a point of no return. If you have kidney damage past a certain point, it can't be repaired. I've heard that. But this way of eating, the carnivore way of eating, is extremely healthy for all of our organs, especially our kidneys.
And because of all that too, like blood glucose, like chronically elevated blood glucose is basically the base of mostly pretty much all diseases.
Yes.
Because it damages mitochondrial health.
Mm-hmm.
So like even recently, like Chafee has been saying that even cancer is diabetes type 5 because your blood glucose levels contribute to these diseases. Dementia, diabetes type 3, okay, Alzheimer's and other things that type 4, because everything has a basis. The first element of any of these diseases has been a chronically elevated blood glucose level. So whether you get like cancer or a different disease, to do with your organs, anything that disrupts your hormone production and damages your organs, it all starts with elevated blood glucose levels. And that's people grazing all day on carbohydrates.
Now, this also causes insulinemia because your pancreas is responding to all that glucose.
Right.
It's shooting out large boluses of insulin.
Yeah.
Then the insulin does its job, and then there's a little too much insulin left over. So now you've got too much insulin and too much glucose, and your hormones, your organs, the damage is just multiplying as the years go on.
Your body responds to the diet that you give it, and
exactly.
Most of the time, if you're giving it these junk foods, it's trying to expel it as best it can. But if you keep feeding it that way, you keep grazing all day long, it can't keep up. So that's where the damage happens.
And if you're curious, you can always check your filtration rate, right?
Yeah.
I just checked mine. Mine's normal. it's like right in the dead center of normal, if I remember right. And I've been eating tons and tons of protein and meat for years, really. I've been, even before my 1 year, this time on carnivore, I was trying to get on carnivore many times and I kept falling off the wagon. And then I was on it for almost a year, about 5 years ago. So I've always been a meat eater, and, but I don't eat any fiber and I don't eat any carbs now. And according to my recent labs, my kidneys are fine. So, and I had a urine analysis and there was nothing in it. So that's another way, if you're curious, sorry, there's
Blood
fly,
work,
or your
yeah.
doctor's curious, just check it and then monitor it, check it every 6 months, whatever, and see what direction it's moving. And then you'll be able to tell. So we got a couple more questions here from, if you're still here, I hope, Dr. Renna's house. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. What's the best source of calcium on carnivore? Mine is low, and I just got a bone spur on my ring finger knuckle. A comment?
So one thing you can do is the little fish with the bones in, like sardines with the bones in. And I know some people also do like eggshell powder, and you can make your own, or you can buy it. But eggshells are basically pure calcium. So those are two really good sources that I know of.
And I wrote in there, if you're okay with dairy, you can do some Parmesan cheese, some goat cheese, lots of calcium in dairy. Butter has a little calcium in it.
Yeah, butter's a great source. Yogurt, if you can handle it.
Right.
But, just because you have bone issues does not mean that you have a calcium issue either. Your bones are largely made up of collagen,
Protein.
and your collagen proteins. But that's why they stay flexible, strong. Calcium is a very, very, very small part, and we need an absolute minuscule amount to absorb from on the carnivore diet. So I would check that before I worry about calcium. But yeah, there are other excellent sources of calcium, like you said, butter, yogurt, dairy, like cheese, that sort of thing. But fish bones are also very good. Fish bones are a very popular source in Japan. They eat for calcium reasons. That's very popular.
That's right. And the
Keeping
thing
in
is
mind
that
also, go ahead, Rick.
yeah, the fermenting yogurt is a good way to do it, because if you ferment it longer, you can get rid of more of the lactose. So even if you are lactose intolerant, and same thing with the Parmesan cheese that was mentioned,
Right.
the real Parmesan cheese is usually made from a raw milk and it's fermented for a really long time. So the amount of lactose that you're going to have is very low. So it might be a good idea to try that. But again, as mentioned, I think that the calcium, maybe having low calcium might be good for somebody that has, let's say, calcium deposits in their blood. Maybe reducing it could
Exactly.
actually be beneficial. It might get pulled out as long as your bones have enough protein where they're not weak. I mean, what are they doing? They're testing a blood calcium. How would they know how much calcium you have in your actual bones unless they did some kind of bone density test? So,
That's right.
we don't really know. I don't think even the doctors really know what the right amounts are for all of us, especially when we're on the carnivore diets. It may be
Well,
totally different than when on the standard diet.
When we eat the carnivore diet, we're getting the right amount of everything. It really is the answer to so many issues and questions that people have out there. If you're low in calcium, eat the carnivore diet. If a person here in the comments is talking about iron deficiency, the carnivore diet. And then there may have been issues that were caused because of a bad diet. Going on the carnivore diet is going to even things out, but everything takes time. It took time to get to certain ways that you are. It takes time for healing slowly.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, bone marrow and bone broth is another way to get calcium as well.
Bone broth. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Good point.
And, kind of like you've all mentioned, keeping in mind that we're getting a lot more fat soluble vitamins now, which are also essential for absorbing and utilizing this stuff. So like people that take a calcium supplement or, take these things out of a whole food context. I mean, I'm not saying that that's what you're doing. The lady who was asking this question, but, a lot of times just, take this calcium supplement, right? Your doctor might say that. Well, how do we know that that is actually being used any more efficiently or better? We kind of talked about this, I think, last night on your channel, John, about how, how our bodies use nutrition in different contexts, right? In an animal-based context versus a carbohydrate context. And so, we're getting, like you all have been saying, we're getting all of the components that are needed to utilize all these minerals properly. And so I think that was all I had to add on that. I know we're getting close to the hour here, but we just got a few more questions that came in. Are you guys, does anybody need to leave?
Go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Maybe we'll throw them up here. Okay. I have some thoughts on this one. Jasna, if you're still here, thanks for the question. I'd be interested in your views on Akkermansia supplements. I think if what you're referring to is the gut bacteria, Akkermansia, and again, I've been like poring over my results here, so that's, I know, and somebody left a comment on that, I think on one of my videos about, because mine was very high. Mine came back much higher than the healthy cohort that I'm being compared to in that test. And so if that's what you're referring to, my general thoughts are, again, we don't have any real evidence that says that we need a certain amount of any type of bacteria. When you look at what a healthy cohort is in these comparison studies, they could be eating all different kinds of diets, right? And these questionnaires that people have to fill out in order to be a part of these studies are highly subjective. We just don't have a very good foundation from which to judge what a healthy microbiome is, what amounts of different bacteria we should have. There are people that will say there's certain associations with like high levels, is what I've been hearing from some people in the comments on my video about this specific microbe that actually means it's bad. But what I read about it was that it's involved in gut health and the repair of the gut lining. And so I was excited to see that it was high in my reading, because I thought, oh, great, I have a lot of these healthy bacteria, right, that are helping to repair my potential leaky gut problem. But it kind of just depends on who you ask. And there's so much information floating around out there about good versus bad microbes, how many need to be here, how many are high, low, commensal bacteria, all this kind of stuff. So I think, the more I learn about stuff like that, the more I, again, kind of go back to this Occam's razor idea. That's like the simplest answer is probably the right answer, right? Looking at our digestive tract, looking at the pH, like we talked about in the beginning, comparing our anatomy to other mammals that live on this planet. Not that we are exactly the same, not that we are lions, right, Christy? You guys get that comment a lot on Lioness Lifestyle. You're not really lions, are you guys?
You're not really lions. Why don't you go live outside in the bush? Yeah, we don't think we're really lions. Thanks.
With your teeth. No, so that's not what we're saying. But what we are saying is that, look, that's something objective that we can compare ourselves to and go, okay, these animals eat primarily meat, right? And that's the way our digestion lines up. So, yes, can we eat plants and not die immediately? Yeah, some of them. But what is optimal, right? And so we're questioning the idea of fiber, right? We don't need tons of fiber to feed these types of bacteria, because again, thousands and thousands and thousands of people now are eating no fiber diets and seem to be getting better, especially people with gut issues are going into remission from this stuff. So anybody else thoughts on this?
Yeah, Christy, I think if you get that comment, you should tell them you're not rabbits, so unless you go out and dig a burrow. I've got a lot of thoughts on supplements. Okay, there's such a range. The fitness industry is like, for example, is one of the biggest killers out there. If you ask me, it right behind the medical system and pharmaceutical. It's just another branch of the pharmaceutical sort of companies, mostly. I don't think even in our day and age, even though there are not so many nutrients in the soil and all this sort of other stuff, and you may not be getting as many nutrients as we should, like on like a cow from 100 years ago, for example. Are you supplementing your diet with something that is full of other chemicals, highly processed chemicals, and highly processed forms of engineered forms of these vitamins? Are they really going to be helpful? See, there's a lot of problems. Even if you get a good quality vitamin supplement, for example, one, it's going to stop your body from producing the hormones because a lot of the things that we need, we absorb the amino acids and fatty acids and stuff from our food, and that in itself goes, in the lymphatic system, goes to different organs to produce the hormones such as D3, testosterone, IGF hormones, and other things. When you take a supplement, you're telling your body that you don't need to do this anymore. So it actually slows its production down, and therefore you are actually stopping your body from producing what you should be getting or should be doing anyway. That's if you absorb it. The other thing is that when you get these supplements, they break down in your stomach because of the stomach acid. Our stomach acid is so strong, and you're not absorbing anything that you want from it anyway. Okay. So everything else that comes with these supplements, like when for example, like a vitamin C, if you take a vitamin C, for just an example, you might get a very trace amount, say 1% of that pill would be vitamin C. So they can actually market that as, it's not a regulated field, the supplement industry. So even if it's got like 1% or even less, they can market that as vitamin C. And everything else that pill can be all sorts of manufactured seed oils and whatever else is what you're actually going to absorb. So even if you can't get a 100% natural human diet, is it going to be worse if you add these so-called supplements? Yeah. So there's a lot of things you need to consider about this stuff. And like I'm not trying to discourage anyone, because I used to be the supplement king. All right, I had more supplements than food in my house, and that's what led to a lot of the problems that I had. Okay, so there are good things on the market, and I just don't think you need to supplement your diet if you have the proper human diet. You want your body to produce the hormones that it does, that it's naturally supposed to do. And I think that's the fastest way to healing your body. Eat the right amount of fats and muscle meats. There are some good products on the market that are nutraceuticals that you can use, especially as you get older. As we get older, we do have problems such as absorbing in the amino acids and the long chain fatty acids and all that sort of stuff. So you need to eat more. So you need to eat more protein, for example, because our protein synthesis in our body gets a little bit gets less and less as we get older. Okay, so as you get older, you need to increase that protein intake. And the same with our stem cells. Our stem cells, for example, the telomeres on our stem cells get shorter and shorter, and so the life of those stem cells gets shorter. That's called aging. The release of new healthy stem cells also gets slower and slower. Okay, that's part of the aging thing. But there are lifestyle things that you can do to enhance that. Okay, so like grounding, sunlight, exercise, and other things, and eating the proper human diet. So, I mean, before you start supplementing everything, just because you might think that you're low on vitamin D, for example, because vitamin D actually is stored in your fat cells as well. So at any given moment, you may test low. Try lifestyle changes first and see how you feel. I think it's much healthier.
Agreed. Does anyone else have thoughts on anemia or iron deficiency specifically? So Francis, are you been on carnivore and you came to it because of these things, or these have become problems since you've been on the diet? I haven't had any personal experience with this. I typically hear that these things improve, but it's something I don't specifically know a ton about from my own experience. else?
Anyone?
I don't have much knowledge about iron deficiency unless it's some kind of genetic deficiency that you're born with, that your doctor can diagnose. That is a possibility. But again, like we've been saying, if we're eating the proper human diet, if we're eating carnivore, things should level out. If there's too much iron, you should have just the right amount. If you don't have enough, you're going to get plenty from the meat. I cook in a cast iron skillet. I'm getting extra iron. It could be something genetic, so I don't know. It's a very specific topic to each person, to each individual. I mean, we can't say a blanket statement about
Yep.
iron, honestly.
Yeah, when my parents got old, they had problems with anemia. My mother especially, she had it when she was younger, and the doctor used to tell her to eat liver, but she hated liver, but liver always worked. When my dad had it, I used to give him steak, and he'd always feel better after he had some steak, but then he was on this goofy health idea that too much red meat was bad, and you can only eat red meat once a week. And but you could see the difference. Even my mom, I used to sneak more. Well, actually, eggs seemed to help her too, but they gave her the little tablets, but those tablets really didn't do a whole lot. I don't know if there was some kind of iron. I don't know what they were. Obviously, you can't absorb metals like iron, magnesium, and calcium, and all these metals. If you were to take them in, you're not going to absorb it. That's like all these people that talk about sodium. Oh, I need to get more sodium. I said, you do not want to put sodium in your mouth, or it'll burn your skin from the inside out, because it's an alkali metal. The same thing with potassium. You put that in water, it'll explode. It's very important that when you get those metals, that they're with some other compound. So you might have with some proteins, or you might have it with, some other material that you can absorb. Maybe I forget what the other one is, glycine. There's different amino acids that you can get, and the heme iron that's found in meat is the most absorbable. You're not going to be able to eat rust and absorb that, which is iron oxide. So I think when it comes down to that, getting it in the right form is probably the most important thing. And again, it's like people talk about sodium, where you're not going to eat sodium bicarbonate, which is baking soda. You're not going to eat sodium carbonate, which will burn you. That's washing soda. It's just, you have to have the right compound. And again, I think that if it's in the meat, which is something that we're designed to digest, that seems the best way to get it. Why would you have to go out there and get a bunch of supplements? You could just eat some liver. There's a lot of things in liver. And the same thing with muscle meat. It really doesn't make sense. And I don't take supplements. I mean, I did when I was a kid. And the vitamin C, you know what it mostly is? It's sugar. They have something called turbinado sugar. That's all those chewable vitamin C's. That's why every time I take them as a kid, it make my sore throat worse. But the funny thing is, eating practically raw meat did better than any of the tablets ever did. So if I had a sore throat and felt really bad, that was the one thing that I could eat, either almost raw meat or raw liver. And I haven't had a sore throat since I've gone back on the carnivore diet. The only time I had it when I was a kid, before I was carnivore, in 93, when I was plant-based, I got really bad sore throat. And then since then, I never get one. What do I get when I get sick? I get a headache. I may start, my nose gets stuffy, and I hardly ever cough. It's always the same routine. So again, if you're anemic, my opinion, this is just from what I've seen, eat the meat, eat the animal products, and you're going to get what you need. And as for supplements, I have no idea, because I don't know what works.
Like
All right,
Rick
let me
said,
bring
like
this up quick because he's responding. So he says, I'm carnivore and I have a history of anemia, still low in iron, and eat liver regularly. Chasing the root cause been suggested gut absorption. So I just dropped a video from Dr. Barry in the chat where he breaks down how we absorb heme iron versus plant sources and stuff like that. If you haven't seen that, DC.
Yeah, I was just going to say, heme iron is basically the only iron we can actually absorb. The other, like there's Fe2, and Fe3. The other one is plant-based, which your body just really cannot absorb efficiently enough to actually get anything from. So like Rick said, it has to be the right currency. There are things that can block it though, because it's a water-soluble nutrient. Okay, so if you drink coffee, for example, it will block it. coffee will actually block you from absorbing the iron in your diet. Whether you're on carnivore or not, coffee will stop that. So there are things like that will actually stop you from absorbing it, but there are other things that will help you absorb it. So like D3 hormone is like a pre-hormone, but it also helps you to absorb the nutrients that you get from your diet in your lymphatic system and into your bones and every part of your body. So I would look at maybe if you're a coffee drinker or maybe there's something in your diet that's stopping you from absorbing it, perhaps, or if you're low in D3, for example, or low in certain other sort of nutrients in your diet, I would check that. Other than that, the best thing you can do is just to continue eating as much meat as possible that you're comfortable with, and just give it time, because your body will adjust to your diet, depending on how long you've been on carnivore as well. So these things I don't prescribe to eating organs. These are lean meats that basically just get fed to the dogs. Dogs live on the lean organ meats. Fatty meat and muscle meat and fat is basically all you need, because we do absorb we absorb nutrients from the fat of the animal, because these are fat soluble and water soluble sort of vitamins and minerals. Okay, so that's where we get it from. That's how we absorb it into our body. They make it, they produce it, they store it in the fat and the water and the meat, and that's how we absorb it. That's just all I would do.
Yep. And full disclaimer, okay, none of us are doctors. We're not giving medical advice, and we can't diagnose anybody or tell anybody what they should do. We have a lot of great stuff on Dr. Barry's channel, all the good doctors around here, Dr. Chafee, who, get more in depth into, how these things work as well. So just full disclaimer here. Anyone need to jump out? We got a couple more questions. I can stay for a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
So thanks, Christy. Thanks, Sean.
Bye, everybody.
Okay, so we had a question from Haley. Do you all agree that total cholesterol and LDL mean nothing? I basically monitor the HDL and trigs, also the size of the lipids.
Yeah, it means nothing. Your cholesterol levels are exactly what they should be at any given moment. Your body produces these lipids. There's no difference between, the only difference between LDL and HDL is that particular lipid, which is basically just a taxi for all your nutrients. So like LDL will have low nutrient content to an HDL. There's absolutely no difference in them at all. These are where your hormones are produced. So or a lot of them are. So it means absolutely nothing to trace them. Plus, when they do test, okay, they count or they measure the HDL, and then whatever's left over, they guess is your LDL count. It means nothing. It's absolutely ridiculous. It is exactly what it should be at any given moment. Your body knows exactly what it's doing, as long as you give it the right food.
Yeah, and it's highly variable. I mean, there's several people now that have gone in one day and gotten theirs tested and then fasted. I know Dr. Baker's done that. He fasted for a day or almost 24 hours or something, and then checked it, and it was 370 or something, and the day before it was 100 and something. So it changes. So the range is so drastic that it can change. So when you're seeing it on a test, it's that's a snapshot in time. And like DC's saying, there's all kinds of reasons why we need cholesterol, and our bodies are intelligent. And this is I feel like this could be the theme of the whole conversation tonight, is we have lost our faith in our own body. We have outsourced our health, nutrition, healing. We've outsourced our brains to, food corporations, pharmaceutical companies, and doctors. And not
That's
saying
right.
all those people are evil or have malintent for the human race, but like that's the situation that
are.
we're in. And so and I think because some people might get irritated that we keep saying, oh, we'll just come back to, if you're eating the proper human diet, then you're fine. It's like, but that's kind of the mindset that you have to at least entertain when you're thinking about doing this, right? Because your labs are not going to line up 100% with the standard American, or standard Western person. Your gut is not going to show the same microbiome as a standard person who's eating pizza and lasagna and drinking on the weekends and smoking cigarettes and doing, however many other unhealthy things, right? So like
Right.
we are experimenting with this and showing through posting our labs and talking about our experiences, not as doctors, right? But just as human beings who are trying to figure out what this means to actually trust in what our body is doing and quit trying to micromanage every single number constantly, because that's what's getting us into this state where we have given our power away and we've said, oh, I need this pill. Okay, sign me up. I'll take it for life. Oh, I have side effects now. Sign me up for the next one. I guess I'm on that for life now too. Oh, now I have more side effects and now my gut doesn't, now this doesn't work. Give me enough. What else do I need? And we keep doing that and we're going to end up in a place where, we've gone too far, and so that's how I would sort of sum up all of these questions, really, in my opinion.
Yeah, and whenever you do blood tests, you can do a blood test in the morning and in the afternoon. They're going to get two different results. Right? You could do, depending on your activity level. Like it takes time for your bloods, like after strenuous work of any kind, or stress, any kind of stressor. It can be exercise, work, like physical labor or anything like that. It takes about a week for your bloods to actually recover to get a normal, healthy reading. So you have to spend like 4 or 5 days doing absolutely nothing before you get a blood test done. So, otherwise, because your blood results are just all over the place. So that's really not an accurate blood. It has to be, you can't base your life on one blood test. You have to do it over many years of regular blood tests. And honestly, unless you are symptomatic of something, there's no point doing it. There's really no reason for you to do it. Right? There's no reason to track your ketones. There's no reason to track your cholesterol, okay, unless you are symptomatic of something. So just relax, chill out, be like Rick.
Yeah, totally.
Well, my doctor did tell me.
We should make T-shirts like "Keep calm and be like Rick."
Yeah, we got merch ideas all over the place.
It's so funny when my doctor back in '96 told me I had the highest cholesterol of any 28-year-old he'd ever seen, and that I would have heart disease by my 50s. And I'm already 56. I feel awesome. I work like a 28-year-old to this day. So, and this was from a doctor who was obese and was breathing hard. I've noticed that people that are unhealthy long before they ever have a heart issue or any other problem, when you get near them, they're always breathing hard, even if they're not doing anything. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like they just don't have enough oxygen in their system. And you see, like a lot of times on YouTube, when somebody's doing a walk and talk, when they're healthy, they can walk or cycle or whatever, like I do when I'm going on my little trips around the neighborhood, and I can talk like I do now. But a lot of these people, once they start to do something, they're breathing, and it's not even that just because they're obese, but it's just some people, I guess their blood cells are so damaged from all the blood sugar that they just can't transport oxygen correctly. And then they go around blaming the cholesterol for it. But I mean, if you think about it, my cholesterol could have been high because that day I was working really hard. I do a lot of physical labor, and as David was mentioning, you could do physical labor and change your blood markers for days afterwards. You'd have to sit down for several days, and of course, if I tried to sit down for several days, I'd probably be so bad I'd probably feel like dying because just to sit down for an hour and relax is not normal for me. I like to do things. Right now, I'm sitting here. I'm just trying to relax and I'm enjoying the conversation. I like being in these chats with people that are knowledgeable and have an open mind, because that's the kind of people that I like. You know, like when you see the vegan chats, you have a lot of these people that are really stubborn, and they say, well, you're not doing it right, or you have to take this, or you need this special melon from the Himalayan mountains, or some other nonsense. And on the other hand, you have the carnivores say, look, you can eat meat, you can eat different meats. It's not a strict kind of, you have to do this diet or you have to buy my product. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're not getting a lot of corporate sponsorship, because our lifestyle is actually the de-influencer lifestyle.
That's right.
Really, the only value you could see, if somebody's trying to start the carnivore diet and they need help, then they might need one-on-one counseling from somebody who knows what they're doing. But to make a program and have like a bunch of people in a group, it just doesn't seem to be, I don't know how to describe it, but it's one of these things that's intuitive. Once you have fallen into the carnivore lifestyle and you know how your body reacts, you can kind of work with it. You don't really need anyone to grab you by the hand and pull you along. You may need advice now and then. You may enjoy having somebody to talk to, and that's a good thing. You know, if you have friends that are in the carnivore diet, you could share recipes, you could share your results. That's awesome. But it's not like these people that have this strict regimen. You have to do this and you have to do that. And this is a complaint I get a lot. Well, I'd love to try the carnivore diet, but I don't have the discipline. I can't do this. I can't give up my treats and this and that. I said, you're looking at it the wrong way. Just like you said, be like Rick, be relaxed. This is not like going to prison. This is not, you're being forced into some kind of regimen. This is something that you naturally want to do. Once you get back in touch with the way your body works, you're going to crave it more than you ever could the junk food, the duck food. You know, you're going to see a piece of meat and you're going to realize how satisfying it is, and the good feeling that you get from being healthy. There's just so many benefits to this. Why would you go and eat junk food? Why would you eat, as you say, a lasagna or pizza or chips or any of this other stuff when you can have something that's really delicious? Why would you want to feel full when you can feel satisfied? I mean, to me, I don't understand it. That's why I like to look at these groups and see like people have interviews and they mention how things were, because I can appreciate that. But to me, it's been so long that I just don't understand why anyone would torture themselves eating garbage, feeling like crap, and then having all these problems and going back and forth to the doctor. So I'm just glad that there's people like you out there that can share your experience. I'm really glad to be in these groups, and I hope that we can reach more individuals and educate them and show them the light of what they could do. They don't have to suffer alone, you know. They could follow us, or at least learn from us.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, we're not trying to sell you anything. Like, I mean, yeah, vegans, they've always got something to sell you. They've always got a whole range of supplements and, you know, all sort of garbage that you need. Like, I'll give you vegans. Actually, I'll give you a good piece of advice. The only thing that you need to be perfectly healthy on a vegan diet is a Tibetan mango. Grows up in the Tibetan mountains. Okay, let's go look for that. I guarantee you'll be a healthy vegan.
That's
yeah,
what I mean.
it's just madness, you know, and there again, common sense will tell you, like, how are any of us alive today then if we didn't have access to this wide range of supplements that somebody probably made $2 an hour to produce somewhere else in the world, and you know, is completely ultra processed, and you know, and even like the produce and all the stuff in the store, like,
Yes.
it just, like, our modern world is so foreign to what actually happens in nature, you know, and you don't have to think for too long to kind of get an idea of what that would be like. And so it just, there's no way that any of us would be here if
That's
we
right.
couldn't
See, Nia's
survive
speaking
and be
the truth.
healthy and reproduce unless we had
Yeah.
access to 800 different kinds of foods and supplements.
You're speaking the truth, because again, to get these fruits and vegetables that people like to eat, that involves basically slave labor, a lot transportation, all this stuff.
Right.
People in the north eating avocados. If I want to eat avocado, which I actually hate, I can just go outside and pick one and I can eat it. If I want to eat a banana, I got them in my front yard. You know, I got all the produce I want. And if I have to, I'll eat it rather than starve. But I will never, ever go to the store and buy produce, because my, I don't know, it's just the way I feel, you know. What do they say? Ethical? My ethics do not allow me to eat fruits and vegetables that were picked by people roasting in the sun, doing a job that I would never do. Now, if I walk outside and I pick my own vegetables or fruits and eat them, that's ethical. But to have other people do the labor that you don't want to do, that's wrong. And,
And
you
quite
know,
often
again,
it's slave labor.
slave labor. But if you go to a ranch like we used to have around here, or a dairy, you know, we didn't really have people working there other than the farmers themselves. You know, at the
Mm.
dairy, yeah, the big dairies had people working for them, but usually the smaller farmers, it was their family that would milk the cows, and they put the hay, and they did a lot of work, but it wasn't like slave labor. You know, I
Yeah.
probably do just as much work in my normal life. It's not the kind of job I wouldn't mind raising cattle, but I would have a very hard time with 100 acres of vegetables. How could I pick all of that? I can't pick all
Yeah,
those
sure.
vegetables. I have to
Yeah,
hire a bunch of migrant
it's all
labor to
these
do it.
all these corporate farms and monocrops and things like that. They rely on slave labor, you know.
Right.
Um,
You
and
know, but
it's
if you have your own little vegetable patch, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're
mm,
growing it without chemicals, without chemical fertilizers, you're composting, you're doing all that, that's great. And I do it
mm,
myself, even though I'm a carnivore. I'm constantly growing I love my vegetable garden. You go out there and there's tomatoes, and you know, it's a really nice little garden. I got my bananas, I got my mangoes and avocados. I don't eat any of them. I give them to the ducks, I give them to my friends. But just to go out there and look and watching them grow, I think that's very important. And if I had animals, I could feed those fruits and vegetables to the animals. So
yeah.
it's not, you know, nothing goes to waste. And then all these
It's
packaged
a good
foods and
exercise
supplements.
too, Rick. Like it's a good exercise
Well,
for
yeah,
many reasons as well. You're grounding, you're getting sunlight, and you're
yeah.
moving.
Well,
But
that's
this
it. And you know,
gardening is fantastic.
you have to trim, you have to mulch.
Mm,
There's a lot of physical labor involved. Rake leaves, grind them up,
mm,
dig. But the other thing too is, like you said, the grounding, the sunlight. I can't get a good night's sleep if I don't go outside during the day. I have to go out from the moment I get up in the morning, and then
yes.
I go out as much as I can during the day, and I sleep better. If I have to work inside all day, working on computers and stuff, I don't sleep that well because I'm not getting the natural light. But the thing is, the 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 plant-based people hate the carnivores, but without the carnivores, they would not exist. Because
That's
the
right.
only way that you can raise vegetables and fruits without chemicals and without pesticides is with animals. You have
Mm,
animals to eat the bugs, animals to eat the plant material, poop it out. You know, they ferment it inside of themselves, enrich the soil. You cannot raise vegetables and fruits without animals,
that's
unless,
right.
of course, you're going to use chemical fertilizers and pesticides.
Which
That's
don't
the
work
only way.
anyway. They still
Yeah.
strip. Like here, actually, I was talking to a friend of mine who has a macadamia farm here in Australia. But one of the worst things, one of the worst crops actually for the environment is blueberries, for example. The chemicals that they spray on blueberries, they last and they can only grow in one area for about for a certain amount of period for a certain amount of time because they strip the soil. But
Hmm.
you can't grow anything else or have livestock on that land for at least like a minimum of 7 years after that crop is left because there's so many chemicals involved. It would poison the animal.
That's
That's how
terrible.
much stuff is. Yeah, it's disgusting what they're doing to the environment. But you can't have an environment without the animals because they give us the topsoil. They give us our environment. You know, that's why we should
Mhm.
appreciate them so much more. You know, it's crazy.
The circle of life, y'all. We go back to the dust, you know, we become the soil when we die, and then the plants, and then the animals, and then we eat the animals, and then, you know, it all continues on.
That's
So
right.
it's just
Yeah.
part of how it works. We got one last question. I'm the only lady on this panel left. However, I think we could probably all comment on this. Oscar, a bold question to ask. If you're still here, I hope are. Does the idea of your men hunting and bringing back animals while you do smaller things around the home make sense to you? Thinking ancestrally, is that how it was? And
Um, I don't think it was really, just that. I mean, like before. I mean, women hunted as well. The same as like a lion pride. The lion and the females, the male and female both hunt as well. It's like that myth where all the lionesses go out and do all the work sort of thing, but actually the males go out and do a lot of the work as well. I think there's I think the whole divide, what men and women do, really is a more recent thing. That it's it's kind of used to divide us. All right. I think of us as a like my wife and myself, we're a team, and everything we do, we share the responsibility. Like when people started working for a living, there used to be like a single income family sort of thing. The man would go out and do the work and come home, and that would pay for the whole home life sort of thing. But mum did a lot of work at home, did the housework, raising the kids and things like that. It's a teamwork sort of thing. And whether, who does it or not, does it really matter? I mean, honestly, who cares? As long as the job gets done. But there's plenty of women out there that do their own hunting as well, and there always has been. There's always been women out there that have run companies, that have built companies, that have been hunting and foraging and building and stuff like that. But all of a sudden, the last 100 years or so, if one woman does it, she's doing it for the all womankind all over the world. Total BS. All right, they've always done it. What they're doing is they're just forgetting about the fact that women have always done this, and I think that's disrespectful in itself. So
I agree. I think and speaking strictly from, like, we could probably do a whole hour on this, but it's like speaking from like a more ancestral context. I think again, there's this idea of more of a communal element to things as well, not just like me and my partner and our kids. And it's kind of, we're a little bit more isolated, I think, in modern day too, with how the structure of how things get done. And so, I mean, I could see on the one hand, like, yeah, all the men in the tribe go out and hunt something and bring it back to camp, right? But then you would have and maybe like all the women would be kind of gathered together with all the kids, and you're weaving fabric, you're making baskets, you're processing food, you're cooking food, you're foraging, you're doing all that, you're working just like the men would be, or anything else. And I'm sure there was crossover between women going out to hunt too, or men doing.
I mean, they might not have done, like, in a tribal sense, they may not have done as much hunting per se, but they would have done gathering, like berries and stuff like that, and they certainly would have done the processing. The men would come home, okay, they're tired, they'll sit down and around the fire or whatnot, and the women would cut up all the meat. So,
well, if you think about it, if women are out there gathering plant material, they would also be seeing the animals. They would tell the men that were out hunting where they were. So they're actually part of the team to be able to figure out where the prey is. So I can't imagine them being completely separated, because I'm sure everybody ate, some of the meat. So they would definitely have their eyes open for any animals.
That's right. Yeah. So it was never that
I think it'd be
big. I don't think it was ever
more
that big separation sort of thing.
Yeah, and I wouldn't. There again, I think like what you said, DC. I think it's such a hot button topic in today's culture, right? Because of the level of division that we have, and I think that's also been cultivated to some degree with intention. If I lost my tinfoil hat, I think it's over there. But again, it's like how can we separate people, right? So that we can create as much infighting as we can, so that people don't look at the bigger picture of what is happening, right? The bigger picture of the fact that so many people are eating duck food and surviving on duck food and fighting with each other that they can't see past, see the forest through the trees, kind of a thing. And so, I think people would have worked together, and, obviously biology plays a role in that. And, but,
well, I mean, like, we've always been a team, like, whether it's male, female or not, like, because not one person can do everything. Right? If we could do everything, we wouldn't need each other, but there would be no species. If we didn't work together, there just would not be a human race. All right. So it's just because, I mean, like I said, like, no one can do everything by themselves. So it's always been about teamwork, whether husband, wife, or the women of the tribe, or whatever else. There's always been jobs. Sometimes it might depend on your gender as to what job you are good at, but that's okay. I mean, you're still a part of the team.
Right, and we are different. Men and women are different.
Of course
I
we are.
think that is definitely true, and so yeah, that does play
Have a
into
look at
things.
the Paris Olympics, and you tell me we're not different. You see
Right.
the boxers.
But yeah, I think it would have been, yes, we would have worked together, teamwork, and everything would have been for the good of the tribe, right? What needs to be done, not about like complaining so much about, oh, this is my job or whatever. It's like, hey, I'm contributing to the survival of everyone right now, and so I'm happy to do that. So awesome. Okay, I think I'll probably wrap it up for here, or at here for now. Anybody have final thoughts? This was an awesome conversation. Thank you guys for staying late too. Thanks everybody in the chat. Maybe we'll just give a quick final thought and sign off for tonight.
All right. Just try to be as natural. To be healthy. I mean, it's very difficult in this day and age, but to try and live as naturally as you can in this very unnatural world. Read the ingredients. Eat whole foods. Stay away from processed foods. And just trust that your body knows what it's doing as long as you give it the right food. You have to have the right tools for the job. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah. Well, the main thing is, you can't be hard-headed. You can't fall into one simple way of thinking and just stay that way no matter what. You have to be ready to adapt. That's like if you were out hunting, once you've run out of species in an area, you might have to move to another area. You might have to adapt and eat some other animal. If you've run out of big game, you might have to eat the small stuff. So the worst thing that you can do is become hard-headed, stubborn, and then be like the vegans, and they just keep doing what they're doing, and they keep doubling down, doing the same thing over and over again, which some people would think is insanity. So you have to continue to have the open mind and then go by results. What I always say is go by results. If you want to get something and you're not getting the results you want, then you need to make some adjustments. And it's really that simple. And just don't get stressed over it, because it's not just eating. Carnivore is a lifestyle. You have to be able to feel like you're accomplishing something. If you're not accomplishing anything, you're not going to be satisfied. You may not be happy all the time, but you'll be satisfied. It's the same thing. You don't want to eat till you're full. You want to eat till you're satisfied. And actually, I had this discussion with somebody I was working with today. He was saying, well, you can't be happy all the time. I said, well, you wouldn't want to be, because you're not going to be. In order to be happy, you have to be, well, less than happy, because otherwise it's just a stable thing. You have to have these kind of ups and downs. You have times when you eat and times when you don't, up and down. So you can't just keep grazing all day. You're not a cow. So again, just take into this account. And again, if you're having all these digestive issues, you need to just stop eating the fiber, start eating more meat, and just try out different foods and see what happens. It's like I tell everyone, why not go to a strict carnivore diet for a few weeks and see what happens? And then if you improve, great. If not, then make some other adjustments. But the worst thing you can do is just keep doing the wrong thing, stressing yourself out. Because again, when you're stressed, your digestion is not going to be right. You're not going to have energy. Your cortisol will be too high. You'll have all kinds of inflammation. So again, be open-minded, try to reduce your stress, and as said, try to live as naturally as possible in an unnatural world. And really, when it comes down to it, the closer you can get to your source of energy or your source of food or whatever, the better. If it comes in a box or it's packaged or sealed, you probably don't want it. And try not to get mad. If you're out in traffic and somebody cuts you off, there's no sense to get angry. Save that anger for the time when you really need it, when you have to fight your way out of a bad situation, or maybe a tree branch is going to fall on you and you got to run, or there's a hurricane coming. Save it for that. But if you're blowing up all the time, you're not going to have the strength and energy left when you need it. And that's how I live my life.
Excellent. Yep. I don't have even much to add to that. So Thanks everybody in the chat. If you're in future land watching the replay, thank you to you as well. Thanks to my excellent panel this evening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for another Carnivore Mastermind. Good night, everybody.
Not everyone.
Good night.